Settle down for a nice evening, or what's ever left of you that night. So there we go.
Okay. Although they are welcome to ask questions at any time.
Yep.
So, kick things off. We'll see if a few more people start coming in. We've just hit 11 a.m. so
Yeah.
nice sunny day in England.
Yes, and a nice warm evening, I assume, in Australia.
Yes, beautiful. The balcony door open and nice warm breeze.
I think if you had the balcony door open in the UK, not that many people do, I think it would be a bit chilly.
Let a bit of fresh air in.
Exactly, that would wake me up.
Oh, very good. Okay. Well, it looks like we have a few people on the line. So we might get started so we have enough time for a nice chat here. So thanks everyone for joining. I'm Stephanie, the Customer Marketing Program Manager at SAP Litmus, and I'm very excited to kick off this webinar with David and Jonathan. So David Herring is the Director of Research at Fosway Group, UK, and he will be having a really exciting discussion with Jonathan Hill, one of our customers, award-winning customers at Commercial Express, and he's the digital learning manager there. So I will let you get started, and we look forward to hearing all about what Commercial Express has been up to this year, and a year of challenge and change.
Yeah, massive year, massive year. Thanks, Stephanie. And everybody, we're going to go through, I've got a list of questions. It's not going to be much of a show and tell, but although Jonathan has got a few things that he's up his sleeve that he'll be able to share with us. But primarily it's about a conversation. And if there's things that you have specific questions at any time, please put them into the chat, post them to everyone, or also make sure they come to the panelists, I guess, would be a good one. But make sure you just post those out and make sure you get your questions answered, because we're going to sort of put Jonathan under the spotlight a little bit and hear his journey in his experience. But Jonathan, without me wittering on too long, and maybe it would just be great for you to give a little bit of background about who you are, what you do, who Commercial Express are, before we dig into what you've been doing with your audiences.
Sure thing, David. My name is Jonathan Hill. I'm a digital learning manager at Express. I've been in the insurance industry for longer than I care to admit, but in an L&D role for about 10 years now. And since, about 4 years now, I've specialised. I've moved from being a classroom-based facilitator and the trainer to the online side of things, because that caught my imagination. And when I joined Commercial Express, they had a learning management system just installed from Litmus, which was primarily an inward-facing, rather compliance-driven application. Because Commercial Express is in insurance terms a managing general agent. So for those of you who are not familiar with,
I wouldn't know what that meant. So what does that mean?
We're basically an insurance wholesaler, if you will. Yeah. We're a broker for brokers. So smaller agencies and brokers come to us, and we would repackage insurance that we obtain under licenses called binders from the Lloyd's and London insurance market. So the easiest way to think about it is we're kind of a broker for brokers, kind of wholesaler of insurance. And the system, Litmus, was purchased with a kind of compliance focus, to get all of our staff on the system. We can track what they've done and typical learning management usages. Yeah. And then we decided, to turn it on its head a little bit and offer it to all of our customers as well. So we're now in a situation where our customers outnumber our own staff by in the region of 4 to 5 to 1. So the audience is largely external customers of insurance agencies and brokers. And it's that kind of value added proposition that has meant that we were able to win the MGA Initiative of the Year award at last year's Insurance Times Award, because we're offering those agencies who, the smaller agencies who perhaps don't have an L&D department of their own, or human resources department of their own, access to a very wide range of training material through the Litmus platform in the form of CE learning, which addresses not only their insurance learning needs, but also soft skills, business awareness, and a whole range of material that they otherwise wouldn't have access to. And that's a perk of being a customer with Commercial Express.
Yeah, so is that external? So that's externally facing. Do those people pay for that? Or is it just a purely relationship driven thing where it's a value add, acting as your partner?
Exactly that. Yeah. So if you go to www.ce-learning.co.uk, if you're an agent in Commercial Express, you can apply for access, if you don't already have access, to CE Learning. And you'll be contacted by one of the account managers that comes your area. They'll just go through a conversation. There's a few qualifying criteria. By and large, if you're doing business with us and you're an active partner with Commercial Express, you can have access to the system, and there's no charge for that. And you get, there are 500 courses on there, and it's a shop window into our product line. But it also, gets you access to that Litmus creative content, covering all sorts of topics, like being an ally in one of the recent courses being published by Litmus. So you can get lots of kind of social awareness, business awareness, soft skills, alongside quite exciting set of courses which highlight our product range in a quite unusual way for insurance. It's usually quite a staid environment, so we've taken a very different approach to how we develop and design the insurance content.
And how is that different? Is it just something that you've taken a bit more of a quirky angle? Is it that using a lot of humor, or what's the secret of keeping these guys who aren't under your control interested?
Well, this is very much. For me, to have a good digital learning strategy anyway. It's about knowing your audience. So our audience is, as I've already said, smaller insurance brokers and agencies who perhaps don't have an in-house HR department or an L&D aspect. So in getting onto our system, they get access to all this material that they wouldn't otherwise get, or would have to pay to get elsewhere. Now, I'm going to show my age a little bit here. I was listening to Nirvana Unplugged in the car on the way over.
Oh, nice.
So, I skew toward, when you gamify things, I skew toward kind of 8-bit, 16-bit, even 32-bit, sort of Sega and Nintendo. And there's elements of that. I don't try to overdo it, but one of our characters is called Indemnity Jones, and the one's called Layability, and they're little playable characters. And they by and large appear to be in a computer game. But what that's doing is it's chunking up the information in a memorable way, so that people come away after playing that game knowing the key unique selling points and the key features of our product line. And that talks to two audiences at the same time, because insurance tends to be very experienced people, or on the other hand, very new to insurance, almost like apprenticeship. So for those who are very experienced, there's a bit of familiarity that, oh look, it looks like a computer game. This is I remember playing games like this. And for the other end of the market, the other end of our audience, it's retro and it's cool for that reason. So it tends to talk to two audiences in that way. But that's not to say that's the entire product line. That grabs people's attention in the shop window. And if you do go to ce-learning.co.uk, you can play Indemnity Jones and learn about one of our policies by essentially playing a computer game. And that's what we tried to do. We just tried to make it stand apart from other offerings and present what could otherwise be quite staid information in a way that's more engaging.
So gamification is a really strong feature along with the characterization in what you do.
Yeah, it is, and obviously litmus reports, badges, achievements, and leaderboards as well. So it all dovetails nicely into that. So it sits well. It sits well in the infrastructure.
Yeah. And are you using those games, the leaderboards and the scorings and the badges as part of those programs? Is that a feature at the moment? Yeah.
Well, all of the courses that we self-publish are badged and have a CE points system attached to them. And you can have a look at the global leaderboard, so where you sit in the entire user base, or you can narrow that down to just your company. And we found that has increased engagement. It meant that in smaller companies that don't necessarily, as I say, have an L&D person standing over and going, come on, you need to do some more courses this month. It encourages you to kind of return under your own steam and do that, because you kind of challenge yourself to get them together.
Cool.
And I know that gamification has always been a hot L&D. It's there. It's subtle. It just nudges people to come back and try it.
But it's interesting, isn't it? We do our research on a regular basis, and gamification is one of those features that never really makes it high up the list. If that makes sense. But as a tool for engagement, I think it's something that's really, really interesting. If you can match it to the right audience, and it sounds like what you've done is match it to maybe a little bit more of a sales orientated audience who are tuned into that, wanting to be competitive and up the leaderboard as well.
Yeah, definitely. And of course, while you're there, you then get to see all the other content as well. So you come into, it gets you into the system, and when you're there, it's like, oh, I'll do that. And the dashboard and the information hierarchy in the dashboard is very important. And the recent update that was provided was, you studied this course, maybe try this one. It kind of gives you kind of cross sells based on the user's activity, which is really interesting. I found that people have been doing that. People have been studying one course and then following the, maybe you should try this one, the recommendation. So on average, apart from a dip in COVID, we have between 40 to 46% of users return at least once every 30 days, and they tend to study. They tend to study 2 or more courses when they return. So I'm pretty happy with those figures, but I'm always trying to improve. Particularly after COVID, that's quite healthy. I'm happy that what we're doing is working.
So in terms of this, I suppose your learning strategy and the things that you put into that, because this is bigger than just the content maybe and the platform. What do you think are good features, are good components of a good learning strategy, things that enable you to be award winning?
Yeah, I think there's 3 main strands to it. I think you have to make sure that the content's available on demand. So it can be easily accessed and quickly. It's got to be accessible across a range of devices, and also accessible in terms of meeting people's needs, subtitling, make sure that the courses have alternatives to things like drag and drops that sometimes people struggle with. And it's got to be curated carefully as well. So it's all very well and good saying we've got over 500 courses. Do those courses add value to your audience? Are there 450 courses there that nobody's studying? So I'm always keeping an eye on activity on the courses, and just looking at what people are interested in, what they're not interested in, and refreshing that. So by curating all that content carefully, making it available on demand, making it accessible, you're just removing barriers to self-led learning. Because this is self-led learning. Nobody's standing over you and saying you must log in to see it. As much as I'd like to be able to do that, and if you remove all those hurdles, people will visit more often and stay longer and do more courses and get more out of it. So it's tricky, because you need to meet people at the point of need. You need to know what their needs are, meet them at the point of need. But also there's a commercial imperative. You need to make sure your business objectives are being met as well. So for us, front and center is our shop window, our product. And we do recommend that new users study those. And we do try to align that to the types of business that they place with Commercial Express. And again, that's an ongoing conversation. We are looking now at making that a little bit more intelligent, so that people are not necessarily studying courses that that don't align with the types of business that they have with us. Nonetheless, we do find that people do study the whole of the market to see learning path, even when they don't have particular interest in the product line. And that is in part because they're quite fun to play. Excuse me.
Yeah. Cool. And so in terms of sort of your operation, you're doing so much, right? So you're working on identifying the needs, you're having conversations with the stakeholders to understand what their outcomes are, you're managing the system, helping to produce content, I assume. How do you organize that from your operating model? Is it just you? Is there a team of people? Do you flex with external partners and internal partners to help create the content, or how is this all happening?
Well, we do try to, well, it is a one-man band in terms of designing new material and the general administration of the system, although I am supported by my colleague in L&D, Sean, and also other aspects of the business do help with some of the administration of the system. So when we talk about, working in an agile way, I do tend to try and follow that mindset, despite the fact that I'm not on an agile team. I'm the Scrum Master.
You are, so you are Scrum Master, you are the production team.
Okay. So when the production team are behind, the Scrum Master's not happy, and I kind of have an argument with myself. So there is a lot of keeping plates spinning and just prioritising, but also making use of the real-time feedback that comes through Litmus each time a person studies the course. We do invite feedback. It's 4 short questions, and one question will just be a free-form question. And I'm always, as that pops up, I get a notification, and I'll just, take that on board. I do a kind of weekly meeting with myself as to what needs to change and needs to be updated. And I think it's just about iterating all the time. So what I've been happy with Litmus in particular is that it's clear to me the way the product has evolved, that they're also got a similar mindset, albeit with a much bigger team, where they are adding new features, testing new features, implementing improvement, and that's based very much on a conversation with people like me and other Litmus users. So I tend to try and follow that same mindset with my users. At the very least, we get that level 1 feedback after each course, and I do intend next year to have a little bit more of an intense conversation with our users, with 2 user forums, probably beginning of quarter 3, to just have a bit more deep dive into what it is the system's offering or not offering, and plugging those gaps.
And in terms of creating the content, what sort of tools are you using as part of your sort of digital learning strategy? Is it just you're relying on one set, or have you got a range of tools that you use?
I'm a what you call a heavy user of Articulate Storyline. Go to these Articulate Storyline boards. I'm quite an active participant in the e-learning hero challenges. Other types of authoring software are available. I just happen to like Articulate.
And what is it about it that you like? Just to dig a little bit deeper.
Again, without turning into a sales pitch for Articulate, if you are an advanced user of PowerPoint and you're getting PowerPoint to do interesting things, you would find it very easy to move to Articulate and then have a very much more two-way interaction. The data that it kicks out and a very much more sort of rounded e-learning. I know that a lot of L&D facilitators are very good with PowerPoint, and they find it very easy to kind of make that jump into e-learning. But Litmus has just introduced its own authoring tool as well, which is built into the system, which I've started to have a play with too, and that looks very promising. That produces learning which automatically scales to the device that it's being viewed on. And it may not have some of the bells and whistles storyline, but it's not always about bells and whistles. So the strings back. I want to use more video next year. So moving into podcasts as well. We've got all the equipment for podcasts. So we're just trying to land the format for that. And other like animation software as well. Like Beyond is something I've got my eye on as well. These are all very familiar names to design for those of you who are not familiar with it.
But it sounds like you've gone on quite a journey yourself, from being in the classroom to being an e-learning developer, and now exploring how to shoot video and record podcasts and edit them and take out background noise and all that sort of stuff. So it's really broadening your skills. Is that, yeah?
Yeah, definitely. Every day's a school day. I don't want to sound trite, and you know, I think some of it's born out of necessity. There is only one of me, and I sometimes need to do things in a different way. But I do have a deep interest in developing my skills in many areas possible to make the experience as varied and as interesting and as engaging as possible with different views. My personality is obvious from some of the courses, but I don't want it to spot the material.
Okay. But you do leave your mark.
Yeah.
That's only human. I think that's the right thing to do. It brings their personality, doesn't it, to the content, and that's a really important part. But it sounds like, again, do you think people should be scared of sort of trying to push the boundary on their own skills? Because especially when you get into this, right, you can think, actually, I do need to go externally. I do need to find somebody who's got the technical skills to help me navigate some of the production, right? Is that something that you think actually that's a little bit of a false boundary in making things successful?
Yeah, you can get into LinkedIn in particular. It feels like it's becoming a bit more like Facebook. It's a bit look at me, look at this, and you can, if you're not careful, get into a situation where you think, crikey, everybody's doing everything and I can't do any of this. And I don't want anyone watching this to think that you need to know all of these tools off by heart to produce a digital learning strategy. We have in the past teamed with external providers to produce, you know, the written content, the technical content, and that takes some of the production time out of it. There is a trend in L&D at the moment to look for unicorns, these kind of mythical creatures who can do all of these things. What I would say is that I do 2 or 3 things particularly well, and I know how to do some of the things quite well. And it's kind of knowing those limits and knowing the blend, knowing what skills you need to meet your needs. And as and when and if I come to a point that something I can't do, I'm always looking to try and find external resources.
Cool. So just thinking about, moving on, just thinking about what you think about in terms of partnering, but especially around some of the solutions and Litmus being a good example. So what do you look for in a solutions partner from your sort of experience now, making this work in organizations and working with an external audience as well? What do you think are the things that people should look for if they're going through and assessing a provider and thinking, who's a good partner for me? What sort of criteria would you suggest based on your experience now?
I mean, what I would preface this by saying is that what works for me may not work for every organization. And working in the financial services industry, financial services sector, there are certain requirements we have to meet. So the ability to evidence and measure success is very important. So you should be able to get data in and out of your system easily, be able to interpret that easily. So if anyone's chopping around for a platform or already working with Litmus, the reporting engine is a big feature for me. Why works so well. It needs to be stable and reliable, and I think that stability and reliability is evidenced by Litmus. They've always been very clear about any downtime that's occurring for system updates, and that's never been interfered with our operation. We haven't had any significant outages, so we can continue offering service to our users, you know, assured that if they try and log in, the system will be working. And just the ongoing support. So there's 2 or 3 members of the Litmus team who speak to on a regular basis, you know, including James Dean and Bosch and Paul Cooper. And it's just having that human face. You're not dealing with like a massive faceless organisation. And that support is, you know, very much kind of ad hoc and on demand when I kind of have to work on a specific problem. But the forums and the wider conversation that has with the user base as to where the system is now, where you think it should be taken and improved. I think that's really, really fundamental. Those needs will differ if you're looking for the system to operate in a particular way. But for us, I think the litmus test, pardon the pun,
that's what you've done there.
The system was purchased for a very specific reason. It was for external use, very compliant, inward facing. And the fact that we've been able to pivot without too much difficulty to talk to two audiences and manage those two audiences in a way that we can kind of separate the MI, speak to the audiences in different ways. You know, you can even use the branding feature in this to give different parts of the audience a slightly different experience. They may see a different layout of the dashboard, they may see a different banner. That ability to pivot from an internal to an external audience and talk to both at the same time and manage both at the same time. I don't shy away from the fact it's a learning management system. We work in the financial services industry. If I had £1 for every time I heard someone trying to sell me something that was the Netflix of learning, I'd be a very rich man. You know, I've just moved house and I've had to log back into Netflix, and I'm at the age where I've started to forget passwords, and it hasn't really been a nice user experience getting back into no internet and not being able to receive confirmation. So when you have this debate as well about, you know, do you want an LMS or an LXP? How you manage your LMS will create a learning experience. You don't necessarily buy something to market it as an LXP, learning experience platform, because your experience is defined by how you manage the system. So what I've been happy with Litmus in particular is that we've been able to almost rebrand it. You know, it's clearly the Litmus platform, but we've been able to add, you know, see learning banner across the top. We have our own animated little ticker tape that comes along from those courses. And that ability to customize it, so you're not just buying something off the shelf and you can't tailor it, has been quite important. So if anyone watching this, you know, wants a platform that they can turn to their own use and almost promote their brand at the same time as using it, Litmus is capable of doing. So
and in terms of sort of the level of innovation that you get, because I think that's one thing that sometimes people overlook, the pace of innovation, the things that will enable the platform not only to be fit for today, that will also enable you to fit the expectations of learners tomorrow. Do you see that coming out as well as being an important criteria for you?
I mean, there is a bit of fear at the moment, but like the millennium bug about all these flash-driven courses that are suddenly going to stop working with flash practice. So that's not a concern for me. You know, that's being addressed in terms of the content that they produce and that we use. And you know, even in the short time that we've had, relatively short time we've had the system since 2017, you know, it has evolved. It continues to evolve. You know, you're not just buying something that's going to stand still. And although it is a fast-moving environment, I think the SCORM reporting language will be around for a little while longer.
It's good.
There is a lot of buzz around XAPI. You know, I have tinkered with it. We have started to use it in places, and again, Litmus currently supports that. But that's more from the authoring side of things. So you know, I think if you're looking to move into this environment, make sure you've got a product that's going to move.
And in terms of just sort of switching tack a little bit, what do you think the challenges are of getting learning right? Because it's when people sort of think or come to digital learning, they sort of think, well, it's just maybe they start off maybe with a bit of page turny type stuff, and it's been a lot like PowerPoint, and then they're always worried about will the old people want to pick up a mouse, and it wasn't as good as being in the classroom and all this stuff. Is that real in your experience, and how? And there must be other challenges that you've had to overcome. How do you work way around those?
I think, you know, unpacking those points in turn. In terms of how your learning is designed, I do think there's quite a lot of snobbery around click next. Sometimes you have to have a button that says next. There's no two ways about it, and I rather look at them as kind of door handles. They should be there, you know how to use them, and when you press them, you move into the next room. You get pretty tired if every door handle you encountered had to click in to see the next room. But nonetheless, you still need sometimes to have a door between two. In terms of learning, you need to chunk your information, so you're not just throwing someone into a massive hall full of. Imagine the room at the end of Raiders of the Lost Ark. All this stuff's stacked up. You don't just throw them into a warehouse and say, there's your learning. You put them into a series of rooms. So even people who say they don't use click next use click next. They may not put next on the button.
They might have scroll next or
scrolling, clicking, each chunk. So chunking your information is really, really important. So that goes both inside your course and also the information hierarchy of your learning management system. So you're not, so people can see quickly where they need to go to find that particular information. That goes back to curating content carefully. But you can almost define the challenges in getting it right by what are the dangers of getting it wrong.
Okay, good call.
And for me, if you, buy Litmus in particular, and I'm not saying it's the most expensive system, nor it's the cheapest system, but if you're paying for a system and nobody's using it, that's a waste of money. So that's why one of my primary performance indicators is just seeing how many people return on a 30-day rolling basis. Because otherwise, essentially, you're paying for slots on a system that nobody's using, and that's a hidden cost, but it's nonetheless a cost. So you just have to have that ongoing conversation to make sure that you're evolving the offering to keep people returning. So I think that's the biggest challenge for me. So you make the learning engaging and make the click next not so obvious.
And by size. And in terms of the size, your size of your chunks, again, what sort of size are you talking about when you go through and create a module or a learning chunk, or how many minutes is that typically in your experience?
That's really interesting actually, because I think COVID has changed that somewhat, and I can only kind of guess at the reasons for that. This is why I want to have a couple of deeper user forums next year. What we found pre-COVID is that people were again visiting, in the main 40–45% of users were coming back at least once every 30 days, right? So there's clearly something here that they're looking at. And then looking at the courses, there was a clear skew toward obviously our product line, the insurance technical, and the soft skills. And all that's great. So when I'm designing an insurance technical course, which goes into some detail about topics such as reinsurance or something sexy like that, you would anticipate that somebody would be prepared to spend maybe 30 minutes, 40 minutes tops studying a course like that. And usually that would be chunked into 3 main sections with a couple of recaps and a couple of kind of formative assessments before we get into it. What I found since COVID is that people are returning, people are visiting, hitting that kind of coming back every 30-day marker that we have, but they're visiting more often in those 30 days. And a slightly shorter periods of time. So they're tending to spend maybe 20 to 25 minutes on a course rather than 30 to 40 minutes. Now, whether that's because a lot of people are working from home and there's more distractions at home, dog comes in, kids come in. I can only really guess at that. But my strategy for next year is going to be much more focused on micro and chunking that down even further where it's possible and appropriate. And more resources than courses. So what Litmus have done now is they've added an assets function, which allows you to just place documents, videos, any kind of content in a repository, almost like a Dropbox, and they can then take that away. So it might be that they come to the system to take something away and study it at their own leisure away from the system and then come back. So that's something I'm investigating.
And that sort of, you mentioned video before in terms of your aspirations. Is that something that you'll see sort of almost being that sort of combination of shorter video based being the sort of style of course that you'll move towards a little bit more rather than maybe being a bit more text based?
I think so. And definitely the podcast, I think, are an interesting avenue. And again, we could use the asset system and tend to use that to allow users to actually download the podcast. So it's not quite as open as perhaps going to to Google or to another podcast provider and downloading something. You're coming onto the system, getting that content and downloading. So that's something I'm definitely looking
Yeah, sure. And talking about COVID, have you seen any other sort of impacts for you as a result of the pandemic? You said sort of, again, it's sort of, I think early on you had sort of high point and low point, you had a little bit of a dip.
Yeah, you could. I tracked the activity that you could see on the graph. So we've been trying to flatten the curve in the other way. So COVID's gone like that. We've been trying to get this curve to come back. And that's been successful. A combination of factors, internal and external. We are now back in the pre-COVID levels. But certainly from March until the back end of September, that did dip significantly. And that's because largely our users are smaller companies who completely shut up shop.
Yeah, okay. Yeah.
I went to a very, very skeleton staff. Yeah. And we ourselves in Commercial Express furloughed a significant number of staff as well.
Yeah, sure.
They were visiting the system as well. So I think the challenge for me next year is about just addressing that perhaps shorter attention span that comes from home.
Yeah.
And also content that's a little bit more bandwidth friendly, because we tend to find that people working from home don't have the bandwidth to handle heavily animated courses.
Yeah. And have you seen other impacts around your L&D team more broadly as a result of the pandemic, and how has that affected you?
Yeah, so our L&D team, it largely comprises me and Sean. We do get support from clients. So I deal with the digital side and Sean deals with the people side. And that seems to work, but since Sean has returned, her focus has been very much inward on the company, talking to our customers, because she hadn't been able to go and visit customers in the same way she used to actually go and visit them in person. So next year as well, we'll be looking at replacing that element of our service with more webinars.
Yeah.
So Sean will not necessarily be going out to people's offices to training in person. She'll be doing it in much this way. And again, we'll be looking at keeping recordings of that for those who couldn't attend on the little system, so they can come back on to see and see what it is.
Okay. So you're also stepping up and helping with the virtual delivery of classroom training and supporting your colleagues upskill themselves to work in this environment, which is again a little bit different from being a classroom and you've been having people for all day. It's a different style.
Yeah, the virtual instructor-led training element is on the dial-up next year, and making more use of the scheduling. The scheduling elements of this, and putting more data through the system so we can pull more data.
So, promises of vaccines, the world might go back to a little bit of what it used to be, or maybe it won't, who knows. But what do you think in terms of the future and the things that excite you around what you're going to be doing maybe over 2021, 2022, maybe over Christmas even? So what things do you sort of, in terms of your future innovations, do you think are exciting you?
I think it's, to summarise what we've already said, I think it's about shorter formats, punchier formats, making them just a little bit more on demand and accessible than perhaps they could. Removing those hurdles to learning, to getting on the system in the first place. So I have been talking to Litmus with Llewellyn Boschuk in particular about getting a single sign-on system. So our agents who currently have access to our training system can just log into that and they'll get into CE learning at the same time. Because again, going back to the Netflix analogy, Netflix is great and all that, but if you forget your password, it's hard to get back into. Following that kind of Netflix kind of information hierarchy, once you're in there, it's going to be very easy to find. Look at all this stuff and how it's relevant to you. You can be much more dialed up. So I'm excited to get into that, making things look more kind of immediately and obviously relevant to users in formats that meet them in the point of need in a very much more focused way in terms of time.
Okay. So much more, a little bit like you said, the resources, performance support being an important part. Now, obviously, sort of looking out at the economic challenges of 2021, there's still maybe a little bit to bite some of us. The whole budgeting process is a challenge for most organisations at the moment, unless they've been maybe you're Amazon and you're doing really well on the home deliveries. are there any tips that you could give people about your approach to budgeting that might help them? I know it's to some extent it's a bit of a dark art, and sometimes it's much relationships that you've built as much as it is the money that you're asking for. But is there any lessons that you've learned or things you could pick out specifically around budgeting that might help people protect their budget lines into 2021?
Yeah, I think identify your fixed costs early, so you know, 12 months in advance when certain bills are coming in that you're going to be able to meet them. It's always a very tricky topic when it comes to learning, because in times of economic strife, L&D tends to be the department that managers look at and go, you know what, we can probably postpone training for 12 months. We can either make these people redundant or redeploy them elsewhere. Because it's the benefits of L&D are often hidden. So I would say that in terms of budgeting, alongside identifying your fixed costs that you know are going to come in, be very clear about what return on investment is created by your activity. And part of our pitch when we got the Insurance Times was a focus on not only the benefit we've given to our users, but also we could identify the increase in revenue from our most active customers. So those customers who are using the system more heavily tended to place more business with Commercial Express. Correlation, causation, I'd like to claim all of that.
I claim it all.
But, it was a team effort. Obviously the marketing was a big part of that. But there's a clear link between those who are using the system more actively who are placing more business with it. And it's that kind of return on investment that if you identify alongside your budget, just makes those conversations about where you perhaps need a little bit more money or a little bit more flexibility in budget a bit more palatable for the people in your organisation who hold the purse strings. So, and in terms of on top of your platform, making sure that you're offering software is the best value. That you're bundling subscription where possible.
But it sounds in many ways. But it sounds like in many ways that by your proximity and working hard to get close to what measures of business success are important to Commercial Express, that actually that gives you a little bit of insulation. Obviously, it doesn't guarantee everybody, but it makes a lot of difference when the leaders of the organisation are reliant on you to help them be successful. And if they understand that link, that's actually a lot of hard work from you to help show that. So from our external view, when we see lots of organisations, so few organisations create that clear line of sight or even attempt to create a little bit of a line of sight. That it's good to hear it pays dividends for you, and maybe you get a bit more budget next year if people want to sell a bit more. I know it's a bit of a claim, but who knows? It's
I've just put the budget in. I've just put the budget in. Some of the people involved may even be attending the webinar. So
cool. Excellent. Well, fingers crossed for you.
But I appreciate that these are challenging times, and it's not not rosy for everybody. And purchasing LMS is a big commitment, and it's a big ongoing cost. But it does pay dividends.
But I think the story that you've told so far in terms of scale, agility, speed, value add, it's difficult to see through the COVID period how you would have ever delivered any of that without the use of technology, and also just all the cost avoidance of if there hadn't been COVID and you were going to do that all through classroom and then face to face, it's not probably a realistic option. Just in terms of the speed that you talked about, in terms of making sure this happens when people need it, it's very much provides you with so much more scalability. So that's a great story. And my last question, so I want to leave a little bit of time for questions from our audience, is just in terms of lessons that you've learned, is there anything that sort of stands out for you in terms of your journey around creating digital learning, using the platform? What lessons would you take away, or things you might even think about, I do that differently now?
Yeah, couple of big things. For me. Talked at the top of the session about Flash being turned up and things stopping. There was quite a big update to the authoring software that I use about 18 months ago, which didn't ruin the courses, but it changed how they performed and looked in ways that sometimes meant that you couldn't find a door and go to the next room. The button. So what I would say is that if you're using a particular authoring software, if that's something that's updated on a regular basis, read the release notes, and just check that there's, if you've got a stock of 60, 70, 80, 100 courses that have been created with that version of that software, and now suddenly it doesn't really play nicely with your LMS, that's a risk, so I'd keep an eye on it. So I'd always do like a risk analysis anyway, to identify the hotspots might be. So that was a lesson learned. That was a weekend with republishing courses and and that's a weekend I'm never going to get back. So that's something you really need to be aware of, because as things move and change, you may find you have to update. So particularly when you've got two systems talking to each other, because they may not necessarily keep it. We're very clear to our users as well that we prefer certain browsers over others, because that allows you to kind of narrow your focus on the testing. And for a team of our size, that's important as well. So we do say, unfortunately, with Microsoft Internet Explorer and Microsoft Edge, we don't support them, because a lot of the elements that we use just don't play nicely for a range of reasons. It allows us to focus on the browsers that we do know.
Yeah, sure.
A particular product. So that was a lesson as well. Because early on, we didn't have that messaging of the browsers. People had problems. We were struggling to diagnose what that was, and it just turned out that they were using a different browser, or browser that in some instances was in theory not going to make me. And just again, just coming back to resource, knowing well in advance if you've got any events you need to plan for, that you've got the resource for it.
Cool. So I've sort of run out of questions on my sheet, so I think it's probably a good opportunity for us to open the floor to our attendees, and if there's any extra questions they want to ask or pick your brains around, while we're leaving people a little bit of space to think about that. One question I always have is, are there forums that you participate in, or user groups, or sources that you think, actually, do you know what? My tip would always be to go to some of these guys because they're quite helpful, whether it's like an authoring community or an LMS community or just a learning community. Are there particular groups that you participate in?
The main one for me is the Articulate e-learning Heroes forum. And within that, the e-learning Heroes challenge, which usually occurs every week, or at least every other week, will be in the challenge. And David Anderson at Articulate runs that. And it's really good. And there's lots of kind of off-topic conversations that arise there. And often that does go into getting your course to play nicely with the elements, and just kind of tip into the litmus forums as well. If you've got a particular problem or a request, a change request, you can talk about that there. And often find that if something isn't quite meeting your needs at the moment, that there's a pretty good workaround. And then the next release usually addresses the thing wanting to fix or to tweak. So they're the main two. Cool. But I'm also a very strong advocate of the working out loud process. Sure. Someone called John Stepper. So what I would say is find your tribe. So whether that's LinkedIn or Facebook, and there's instructional design Facebook groups, or LinkedIn. Just it does require a little bit of kind of bravery sometimes, a bit like participation. Just put yourself out there. And you will find that people who think similarly, approach the topic similarly to you, and sometimes they don't, you start to have conversations with them. And by working out loud and kind of discussing what you're trying to do and how you can do it. I've learned an awful lot over the past 12 months by just experimenting and having those conversations. LinkedIn, the e-learning Heroes forum.
That's really cool. And a couple that I'd recommend would be to think about the e-learning network. And John, now that you're an award winner, you should be judging other people. Yeah, so you should be on the judging panels now for for the projects for the e-learning network. It's good, something really would be worthwhile getting involved in. Also the LPI, I recommend getting involved with those guys as well. So been involved with them for a while, and I think it's interesting. I've always spent, and I think it's I've worked at home for almost 10 years now, and we do lots of calls and lots of conversation with clients. We've been working in that pattern for a long time. And I think one thing you have to think about is how you build and work with your network, and actually trying to find coffee mornings. I do a virtual coffee call once a week, half an hour, 45 minutes, with people that I wouldn't ordinarily get to meet. And you just get a chance to talk about stuff. And I think it's important for people to remember that they can spare an hour of their time a week just having some connection with people professionally or just casually. It's a really nice thing to do. So I think that's something I take away. And that's my top tip for working from home, actually, is if you're not going to be meeting people in an office, find another way to meet people, because you will go mad. I've been really lucky because my wife's been at home and kids come home early, and we had lockdown and the kids were about. So I actually found it really nice during lockdown because I had more company. But I think it's something you have to try and find a way of combating the being sat on your own, forming your own bubble. So that's my top tip. But I'm conscious that we're getting sort of towards the top of the hour. Stephanie, I'm not sure if we've had any more questions come in. So
yes, we've had a couple come in.
I've missed them. I've been looking in the wrong place.
Yes. So there's a question section and a chat section, and in the questions section,
I've been looking at the chat, thinking, where's the questions?
No, that's okay. I actually, that's all right. I was waiting till the Q&A section because I think that John, you actually did touch on a few of these. Faisal asked about increasing some strategies you have to increase traffic on the LMS.
That's a good question.
Yes, I think that's a good question. And then there's also one here from Carl. What general advice can you give to someone looking at the potential use of an e-learning platform like SAP Litmus for a very niche market with a somewhat limited audience? So there's some good questions.
I do apologize, a bit of background noise here. I think my mum's neighbour decided to start drilling.
You're fine. It's nice and quiet. You've got good audio.
Cool. So in terms of getting more traffic to your system, if you want a quick laugh, go and look on YouTube for Commercial Express and you'll find our YouTube channel. And I've started doing little video promos that highlight the new courses that I've been on. And so I've got really distracting drilling noise in the background. And I think it's about marketing. I think this is a question of marketing. And I think L&D can learn a lot from marketing. So you don't need to necessarily star in your own marketing videos as I've chosen to do. And they very much came out of the working from home situation. Oh, crikey, look at this is new. I'm sat in the bedroom and here's the new course, business as usual in these new circumstances. But the core of that is here's what's coming, here's how it's going to benefit you, and getting people into the system. So you can do that internally as well. You don't need to do that on your you can send an email around your business. You can put a link in, hot link to the course, and people can jump straight into the course. And it's all about just awareness. I think increased traffic is you need to signpost where that traffic needs to go. You can only get more traffic if you build the road. Let's kill the metaphor. Put the signs up, build the road, and send them where you want them to go. And that's about having a conversation with the users. So when you're talking about a very niche audience as well, in perhaps a very sort of confined way, that just really sharpens your marketing, even if it's just internal marketing, on what it is that's on offer, why it is they will benefit them, and how it is they can access it. And there's a number of ways you can do that. You can use videos, you can use GIFs, and just look at the best advertising that catches your attention. Getting people through the door.
And I think just to add to that, personalization really matters. So make sure you target the right message at the right people, and think about the authenticity of what you do. I think it doesn't have to be super polished, but if you're reaching out to people with the right things, then it really does feel so it's coming from the heart and it's genuine. That makes a lot of impact. It really does. So I don't think you need to have the Hollywood production values. It's just a matter of making sure you reach out. And I think that marketing thing is something that we see so often that people underestimate and underinvest in. So do take a little bit of extra effort. It's not worth building these things and then just thinking people will turn up. If you don't communicate strongly, it'll be an empty room. So
totally. There's a lot to be said for a minimum viable product, and that's across the board. Marketing, content, the lots. You know, if it works and does the trick, you know, perfect's the enemy of good.
Yeah, exactly. And I think one of the other things we often see is that sense of trying to use diagnostics. So a short set of questions and giving you a score. I don't know if any of you ever sort of go on the BBC website. They used to have like the top 7 questions, right? Are things that happen during the week. And it gives you a little rating. Are you a dud or are you a superhero? Some of those simple little things are just enough to help people say, yeah, I probably should go and look at that because I'm not as confident or capable as I thought I was. And you go and read it, right? And that's a marketing tool that the BBC used to link you back to content that they published during the week. So most of these things are in plain sight, and sometimes you don't recognise them. So there's some great things out there.
And Litmus supports that as well with the boosts function as well. So it will send a little question out to a user after they've studied the course. Like, come back to the system, just answer a few questions out a week or so later, and just make sure that they're still recording and applying after they finish the course.
Amazing. John, I think we're probably running rapidly out of time, and I know there's probably questions that we probably should have answered, but I'm not going to intrude into the rest of the time. Stephanie, I'll hand this back to you. But John, thank you so much. I know you've been such a busy man over the last few weeks with budgeting and courses and moving home during a time of national lockdown. I do not underestimate the amount of things that you've been juggling, and then to do this for us as well. I think it's been amazing. So thank you for all your great wisdom and sharing. I had a great time. Thank you. So Stephanie, I'll let you wrap up. So thank you.
Yes, thanks very much to you both for putting together a great discussion and keeping us also engaged. It was so fantastic to hear all your insights. For anyone else who would like to learn a little bit more about Commercial Express's story, we have a live story up on our website as well, and a little video that John put together for us. And there's also a link in the chat there to their award-winning learning webpage, so you can inform yourselves a little bit more. And I'd like to thank everyone for joining. We'll be sending out a recording of the webinar as well, so if there's anything you'd like to revisit, and I'm sure if you have questions, David and John are active on LinkedIn and very approachable people.
Reach out. We're always happy to pick up the conversation. So thank you for being with us, and thanks Stephanie, thanks John.
Thanks very much. Thank you.
Bye.
Bye.